Welcome to Heal Your Past, Master Your Future. I'm your host, Tracy Malone, a certified holistic counsellor and coach. In this episode, I'm going to talk with you about the principles of Family Constellations, which is about healing ancestral trauma, and why it's so important to understand and heal this unresolved trauma that we are carrying unconsciously from our ancestors. It's been well documented now, and there have been studies done that actually prove scientifically that we carry trauma from our ancestors within our DNA, especially our grandparents. And it's wonderful that these studies have been done. And this is something that we've known in family constellations for a very long time. And a lot of the ancestral trauma that we carry is actually through our unconscious. We're not consciously carrying around unresolved trauma and wounds in our everyday life. It is in the things that we don't recognize that we find a lot of them. But with awareness, we can start to unravel and figure out what might be what we call systemic, a systemic entanglement, which means it's coming from the family system behind us, not actually our own personal wounds and behaviors. These are the things like we swear we'll do things differently that our ancestors did, or we'll swear we will never be put in that situation again. But soon enough, we find ourselves repeating old patterns. These are pretty easy ones to figure out, these ones. Other ways you can start to consider whether or not it is an ancestral trauma is unconscious blocks in your life that you can't heal with traditional therapies. So you've been going through therapy with counsellors or psychologists or whomever for years, but you're not actually coming to any resolution. You can't actually shift through this block. This is one sure sign that somebody is actually carrying a systemic trauma. This was an unconscious block, and as soon as we resolve this block and we heal this block back in the ancestral trauma, all the other work that you've actually done is open to be available to you in your life now. The questions we ask is, why does it entangle? Why do we get entangled in our ancestors' trauma? Why on earth does this happen? Good question. This work, Family Constellations, was created by Bert Hellinger. He was a psychotherapist, a German man, and he spent some time with Zulu tribes in Africa. And he saw how they were able to all live together, separated families, all living in harmony. And he studied their really incredible ways of dealing with issues because they were very different to the Western world. When somebody with a family system had a problem, they brought them in. They didn't exclude them. And he looked at what they did and how they called upon the ancestors and all this beautiful work that they did. And he created this form of therapy. Family Constellations works on some key principles because it all sounds quite airy-fairy and quite esoteric, and it can look that way, but it's actually very grounded. It is very evidence-based. So we've been able to see the hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are facilitating this across the world now, that with a similar issue that people come to us with, there's actually a similar trauma within the ancestors. We don't go in searching for that, but we have found time and time again that there are actually patterns to ancestral trauma and how it shows up in our lives today. So it's very grounded and it's very evidence-based. The three key principles that we work from is the need to belong. So we all have this very innate need to know where we've come from. And if we don't have this, we can actually move through life with a real unconscious wound around it. So anyone that is excluded from the family system, anyone in the family system, the ancestors, with unresolved trauma, anything that hasn't been resolved, and a lot of times in ancestors, if you have a trauma, nobody really dealt with it. Or if you had something going on, if you were different in any way, you were excluded. You were not owned by the family and brought in, you were excluded. Anywhere there's unresolved trauma, or anyone in the ancestors who have been excluded, it usually then entangles and is passed down the family system with the descendants to have the issue resolved, because it is like a space where everything wants itself to be resolved. So if it's not done in the current family system, it will be passed down until it gets resolved. The other thing we look at, the second principle, is the flow of giving and receiving. There is a natural flow, and the flow is meant to always go in a family from parent to child, not from child to parent. We are based on the principles that the parent is here to give to the child, and the child owes the parent nothing. And it's really important. How does the child pay the parent back? For want of a better word, they give to their child. And how does that child pay their parent back? They give to their child. So the giving, the way we give back to what our parents gave us, is to give that to our child when we bring them into the world. We actually don't owe our parents anything. Any time that flow is disrupted, or the child starts to give back to the parent or feel obligated towards giving back to the parent in some way energetically, that natural flow is disrupted and reversed in a way. So if you think about the energy flowing from parent to child, that child grows into a parent and has a child, and it flows down. It just keeps flowing from parent to child, generation after generation. If one of those children stops and turns the flow around and gives it back to the parent, what does their child get? The flow is all disrupted and it becomes very out of order, which is the next foundation that we look at within family constellations. Everyone has a place and an order. Anyone out of order will upset the system and the flow of love. So what we're looking at here is everyone has a place, and making sure that we put everyone back in their place. And when we work in family constellations, we use things to represent ourselves and the people within our family system. We can use pieces of paper, there are little dolls that are available. I use horse figurines, anything you like. I've done this in a paddock with clients with sticks and leaves. It's a visual representative of a family member basically and an ancestor, and you start with your own family of origin. And a lot of times when people start this and they place their family out as to where they feel their family stands now, it is always 100% of the time since I've been doing this work been out of order. They'll place themselves as the child between their two parents, or the mother will be in the father's position, or something like that will be happening. And so one of the things we do is we place everyone back in order. And it's really important to do this so everyone knows their place. And when they know their place, they can actually settle. People subconsciously think they want to go and take somebody else's place, but it never feels quite right. And what it causes is, again, an entanglement, an energetic entanglement where nobody feels right and conflict happens. So we resolve that. The one thing that I say consistently when I'm working in family constellations with clients is I follow the path where the love is not flowing. So instead, the trauma is flowing. And what we do is we go back into the ancestors. You can know a lot about your family in this work, and you can know nothing about your family in this work, because there's a lot of it that is intuitive, but again, very evidence-based. We're very well trained, and most of us know what we're doing and how to follow that flow and where to look and how to communicate with these ancestors. And it's done through the body. It's somatic work, so it's very deep when you do this work as well. When we go back and find where the trauma began, so we have a trauma a few generations ago, and that trauma is being handed down through the family system, and it's entangled and it's re-representing time after time after time. And for example, it may have meant that nobody could be emotionally available for their child, and so that is the pattern that's been handed down. I follow that pattern back to the first ancestor where it began, and I actually find the words, we have a lot of healing words, beautiful healing words, where we speak the truth with love and reverence, and we hold everyone in the space of love when we do family constellations work. And we find the healing words to actually heal the trauma that happened back there. We bring in a lot of support, we bring in a lot of healing right back there. And then what we're allowing is for the love to flow. So instead of trauma being passed down from generation to generation to generation to you where you are now and then to your children, what is allowed to flow is the love and the support. And it's a really beautiful thing. And it can be really life-changing for people to, instead of walking around feeling like they're alone and having all these unconscious behaviors, to actually feel the support of their ancestors behind them and know that their ancestors want them to succeed and will help and support them in any way that they possibly can. Some of the things that I've learned from doing many of these over all of these years in family constellations is your ancestors want you to thrive. And often they are quite shocked when they realise that they went through all they did and you're struggling now. They see the life that you're living in this current day and time and they're like, for goodness sakes, you've got everything in front of you. Why are you not okay? And when they realise it's because of a trauma that they had back then, they're quite shocked. And they want to resolve the trauma. They want to help and support you to make sure you're okay. So they really, really want to have your back. They really want to be a resource for you. And a resource is something that you draw upon for support and strength whenever you need it. And they want to be that for you. They want you to feel them lined up behind you. You can line your ancestors up behind you any time. You might remember Oprah stood there, and I can't remember the exact words, so I may get it wrong, my apologies, but it was something like, I stand here as one person, but I have the thousands that came before me. That is deep ancestral work. That gives me goosebumps every time I hear it, because I know that I too have done so much work in this area, that in everything that I do, I'm fully supported by my ancestors that came before me. And the strength and support I feel from them is strong, and it's very evident, and it helps me to have them as a resource to move through the world. And that is available to you as well from your ancestors. So what to do? You've heard of this now, and what do you do about family constellations as if this has really triggered or opened something within you? Family constellations is a worldwide therapy that people use now. You can see more of it. Michaela Boehm did a piece with Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop on the Goop series on Netflix. You'll see that. And you can see a little bit more about how it works in a group situation. It is done in two ways. It is done one-on-one, or it is done in a group where you actually have people represent your family members. You will find facilitators all over the world. If you pop into your search bar, Family Constellations near me, you may very well find someone. You can also work with people. I work with people from all over the world. So if I'm someone that you would choose to work with, you can find all the details on my website because we do it over video conference. It's very easy to do. And you'll notice with anyone that you choose that they can work over video conference. Being on opposite sides of the world does not dampen the strength of the energy of the process. The ancestors show up, they are beyond the space-time continuum, and it can be very powerful work no matter where you're working from. So remember that healing your past and mastering your future is really within your reach. And this is something to consider when you're doing your own self-healing, is you may have done a lot of work with a lot of people over time, and you're like, there's a missing piece, and this could be it. That's why I really wanted to talk about family constellations today, because I have seen it to be a real watershed moment in people's lives where they're like, that's the thing I've been missing. All the other work makes sense to me now because I've done this. So have a look at it, have a think about it, sit with it, see how it feels. And remember that together we can uncover the power within you to create a life filled of joy, purpose, and fulfillment. Thank you again for joining me on this episode. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations and insights on the Heal Your Past, Master Your Future podcast.